Hello all, welcome to Paritranaya. In this class we shall discuss about demands for grants. So in the previous class we have already discussed about budget and we found that the term budget is nowhere mentioned in the constitution, but instead of budget the term annual financial statement is present. And the annual financial statement, it speaks about the receipts and expenditure of the government. So about all these things we already discussed in the previous class. Now next, when it comes to demands for grants, it speaks about the expenditure part of the government. Now when government wants to spend, it needs to take permission. So demands for grants is related to that aspect. So here, whether demand for grants term is present in the constitution, yes, it is present in the constitution. Where it is present? Article 113 of the constitution speaks about demands for grants. So here we shall see what are these demands for grants and who seeks permission of whom. Okay. So we have often heard about government. So what exactly is government? So about these things we have discussed in detail in polity related classes. Here at the superficial level, we shall just revisit those topics. So when I say government, it means I am referring to Council of Ministers headed by Prime Minister. So in Council of Ministers, there are various different portfolios. So there will be Agriculture Ministry, Health Ministry, Education Ministry, and so on. So totally in India, we have close to 50 ministries. And we also need to know the difference between ministries and minister. So when I say ministry, it is a bunch of people working together for a particular cause. So that is ministry. But these bunch of people working together, so they are headed by one particular important person and he is minister. Okay, he is minister. Now, that with all the 50 ministers together, we call them as Council of Ministers and also plus Prime Minister. So Council of Ministers plus Prime Minister, we call them as government. We call them as government. Now this government, whenever it wants to spend money, it needs to take permission. So whose permission it has to take? It has to take the permission of Lok Sabha. So why government has to take the permission of Lok Sabha? Because in Lok Sabha, we have elected representatives of people. So when government takes permission of Lok Sabha, it is nothing but, it is like seeking the permission from the people of India. So if Lok Sabha grants the permission for government's expenditure, then it is equal to saying that people of India have granted permission to the government to spend money. So that is why government seeks permission of Lok Sabha. So again in detailed we have discussed in the polity related classes, but again at the superficial level we shall understand that, or we shall just recall. When I say permission, so there are 545 members in Lok Sabha. So all the 545 members need not give their consent. So here we go for simple majority. Among the 545 members, even if half of the members, that is 273 members, if they say yes, if they give their consent, then government can spend the money. Government can spend the money. So again, about the absolute majority, simple majority and other majorities we have discussed in polity. Here, to give permission to government to spend money, what kind of majority is required? Simple majority. So whenever government wants to spend, it will make a request to Lok Sabha in the form of demand. So it will say, it will demand, I want so much money to spend. And if that demand is accepted, then Lok Sabha, it will give the permission, that is called as grant. So Lok Sabha granting the permission to spend, we call it as grant, and demand made by the government is demand. So demands for grants. So government is making a demand to the Lok Sabha to grant funds to it. Okay, to grant funds to it. So that government can utilize the funds for expenditure. Okay, for expenditure. So here I have shown few ministries: Agriculture Ministry, Health, Education, and so on. So next, what specifically with respect to ministries, we shall see how exactly they make demands. Okay. So here I have taken an example. Here we have Finance Minister. So we already know that who will present budget in the Lok Sabha, or who will present annual financial statement in the Lok Sabha? So it is Finance Minister. Already we have seen Finance Minister presents annual financial statement in the Lok Sabha. Along with the annual financial statement, Finance Minister, he also presents demand for grants. Demand for grants. So what are these demand for grants? Now see here, I have taken as an example Agriculture Ministry, Ministry of Defense, and Ministry of Youth Affairs. So similarly, we have what? Totally 50 ministers. Okay, totally 50 ministries. Now, some of the departments may also have multiple, some of these ministries may also have multiple departments. As an example, for agriculture ministry, I have taken 3 departments: department 1, department 2, department 3. Similarly, for ministry of defense, I have taken 2 departments. For youth affairs ministry, I have taken 2 departments. Now, ministry of agriculture, it is making a demand. Okay, it is not making a single demand, it is making totally 3 demands. So department 1 is making a demand of 50 crore rupees. It says that I require 50 crore rupees for spending on a particular scheme or for some other expenditure. Similarly, department 2 will also make a demand for grant. Let us assume it will make here for 100 crore. Okay, 100 crore. Similarly, department 3 may also make a demand for grant. So in this fashion, all the departments and all the ministries involved will be making one or the other type of demand for grants. Okay, demand for grants. So all these demand for grants, they will hand it over to finance minister, and on behalf of them, finance minister will present those demands for grants in the Lok Sabha and seek the permission of the Lok Sabha members. Now, the things which we need to understand from the exam point of view. Now, in exam, what kind of questions can be asked? Whether there is a binding that every ministry or every minister can only present one demand for grant? No, there is no such kind of restriction. So any ministry, it can present multiple demand for grants, but usually it will be only one. But there is no such hard and fast rule, or there is no restriction. They can make more than one demand for grants. And this is clearly visible that in 2021-22, finance minister, he has presented totally 101 demand for grants. But how many ministries we have? We have only 50 ministries. If there was a rule that one ministry can make only one demand for grant, then in 2021-22, it could not have been 101. So why it has been 101? Because some ministries have made more than one demand for grant. So this is a very important point to note from exam point of view. So in examination, if they make a statement that any ministry can make only one demand for grant, that is false. Similarly, one department can make only one demand for grant, that is also false. So as an example I have taken here, within youth affairs ministry, there is one department, so it has made 2 demand for grants. Okay, so there is no restriction on departments as well. Even a department can make multiple demands for grants. Okay, so all these demands for grants from various ministries are collected by finance minister. Along with the annual financial statement, he will present these demands for grants to Lok Sabha, and if Lok Sabha grants permission, if Lok Sabha gives the nod, if Lok Sabha gives the consent, then whatever the request they have made, so that amount from the consolidated fund of India, that amount will be transferred to Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Defense and other ministries. Okay, and so on. Okay, and so on. So this is how it works. Apart from this, another important point to note here is when it comes to union territories. So we know about the union territories. Delhi is a union territory, Puducherry is a union territory, Andaman and Nicobar Islands, Chandigarh, Lakshadweep, Dadra and Nagar Haveli. So all these are union territories. Now there are few union territories which have legislature. For example, Delhi and Puducherry, they have a own legislature, they have their own government, they have chief minister, they have council of ministers. Whereas when it comes to Andaman and Nicobar Islands or Chandigarh or Lakshadweep, they do not have their own legislature, they do not have their own council of ministers. So these union territories, they are directly under the control of central government. Okay, central government. So whenever we want to spend any amount in these territories, Andaman and Nicobar Islands or Chandigarh, so directly it is under the control of central government. But when it comes to Delhi and Puducherry, so there directly central government is not involved because the local legislature and local government exists. So that is why for expenditure related to these union territories without a legislature, so they also require demand for grant. So every union territory without a legislature will have its own demand for grant. Very important. Andaman and Nicobar Islands will have a separate demand for grant. Similarly, Chandigarh will have its own demand for grant. So separate demand for grant will be presented for each of the union territories without a legislature. This is also a very important point. So in the examination, they may frame a statement like this in prelims, that all the demands of various union territories without a legislature are put together and presented as one demand for grant. If they make such kind of statement, then that will be false, because here all the union territories without legislature, so a separate demand for grant is created for all of them, and the same is presented along with annual financial statement in the Lok Sabha. Okay, in the Lok Sabha to seek permission of the Lok Sabha. Okay. So this is about demand for grants. demand for grants. So the same things have been presented here. So Article 113 of the Constitution mandates that estimates of expenditure from the Consolidated Fund of India included in the annual financial statement and required to be voted by the Lok Sabha be submitted in the form of demand for grants. So whichever requires expenditure requires permission from the Lok Sabha, so it will be presented in the form of demand for grants. So generally one demand for grant is presented in each ministry or department. However, more than one demand may be presented. So as we just discussed, so there is no such restriction. So more than one demand can be presented. We also saw that when it comes to union territories without a legislature, a separate demand is presented for each of the such union territories. So with respect to this also we discussed. Okay. Next, in 2021-22, as an example I have taken, so there were totally 101 demands for grants. So this number is not important from exam point of view. Next, whenever demand for grant is presented, so it shows separately voted and charged expenditure. So we have already discussed about the difference between voted expenditure and charged expenditure. So if at all you are getting confused, then you can revisit that video. So to understand the difference between charged and voted expenditure. Next, similarly, it shows separately revenue expenditure and capital expenditure. So we have already made a discussion about the revenue expenditure and capital expenditure under the topic called as revenue budget and capital budget. So in case of confusion, you can revisit that video as well. So this was about demands for grants. Similarly, in the subsequent videos, we will be discussing about the other important topics related to economics. For all our updates, subscribe to our channel and hit on the bell icon. Thank you.